I wonder how ancient people cut granite with such primitive tools. The blocks weigh hundreds of tons, and the joints are so precisely fitted that even a blade cannot fit between them. Strange, isn't it? Textbooks claim that the ancients only had copper chisels and ropes, but looking at the drill marks, which even diamond drills cannot match, it is difficult to believe this official version. Is it just a coincidence that stone processing technologies in Peru, Egypt, and Japan are similar, despite the vast distances and time differences? In today's journey, we will visit the most mysterious places on our planet. These sites have been the subject of debate for decades, but today we will try to separate mysticism from real facts. Be prepared, because what you are about to learn may radically change your worldview. We have chosen the island of Java in Indonesia as our first stop. For centuries, local residents have revered Mount Gunung Padang, considering it a sacred hill with ancient stones at its summit, and have come here to pray to the spirits. In 2010, everything changed. Geologists arrived at the mountain not with prayers, but with tools. They began scanning the soil with ground-penetrating radar, seeking to study seismic activity, but the instruments showed results that shocked them. Beneath the layer of earth and grass was not just a mountain, but a huge, man-made structure. Radiocarbon analysis of organic matter found between stones at a depth of 30 meters prompted scientists to recheck their measurements. The test showed an age of about 20,000 years. To understand the scale of what happened, one must imagine the Ice Age, when mammoths still roamed the earth and the pyramids were still 15,000 years away. The news shook the internet, destroying conventional ideas about the world. According to scientific data, 20,000 years ago, humans were simple hunters living in caves. They had neither a state nor a developed economy to feed the workers needed to build such structures. Fans of alternative history immediately put forward the hypothesis that Gunung Padang is proof of the existence of Atlantis, or another highly developed civilization destroyed during the Great Flood. After all, how else can one explain the existence of the oldest pyramid in the world, if not by the intervention of a forgotten race of giants or aliens who allegedly taught our ancestors? However, the reality turned out to be somewhat simpler, but no less exciting. After the excitement subsided, geologists clarified the nature of these mysterious stone blocks. They explained that these are columnar basalts, a phenomenon that occurs when lava in a volcanic crater cools and breaks into perfectly flat hexagonal columns. Thus, the bricks for this pyramid were made by nature itself, not by an alien factory. What is surprising in a different way is that people discovered this place, and without using any technology, dragged thousands of heavy columns, reinforcing the slopes and forming terraces. This is not just construction, but a purposeful modification of the landscape. The mystery lies not in technology, but in sociology. How were hunters able to unite and work for centuries without kings or overseers? In Indonesia, ready-made stones were used. But what is found in India cannot be explained by natural phenomena. There, the builders did not simply erect something new, but methodically destroyed a mountain to create a unique masterpiece. Welcome to the state of Maharashtra, to the Kailasa Temple. The first impression of this structure is a lack of understanding of how it was created. Usually, buildings are constructed from the top down. First the foundation, then the walls and roof. Here, everything is different. This temple, as tall as a 9-story building, is not built from blocks. It is completely carved out of a single giant rock mass, from the bottom up. Imagine a sculptor who, just as he carves a statue out of stone, cuts away the excess to create a temple. Imagine that this statue is a grandiose complex with columns, halls, statues of elephants, and incredibly intricate carvings, where every detail forms a single monolith. To create this marvel, workers had to extract 200,000 tons of volcanic rock from the quarry. If this stone had been loaded onto freight cars, the train would have stretched for 40 kilometers. And the most amazing thing is that the architects were not allowed to make a single millimeter mistake. Any mistake made by the stonemasons could have led to disaster. It was impossible to glue or replace a broken piece. The temple was carved from a single monolith. According to official information, it was built in just 18 years. The math behind this is astonishing. Workers had to extract 30 tons of rock every day. They worked 7 days a week, regardless of the weather, not counting the time spent on intricate carving. Many believe that it is impossible to build such splendor with a hammer. A popular theory on the internet is that the ancient Indians possessed technologies that we have lost. From giant machines, traces of which are said to be visible on the walls, to directed sound weapons capable of destroying stone. How else can one explain such speed and precision in construction, when even today, the erection of such a monument would be a complex engineering task? But the answer lies not in alien technologies, but in the ingenious organization of labor. Experts have noted that the secret to the speed of construction was the use of the vertical excavation method. Workers did not have to lift heavy stones upwards, as was the case with the construction of the pyramids. Instead, gravity helped them. The debris was simply dropped down. As for tools, ancient craftsmen used steel wedges. They drilled a series of holes in the rock, inserted dry wooden wedges into them, and poured water over them generously. As a result, the wood swelled and split the stone along a predetermined line with tremendous force. However, the main resource of the ancient kings was people. Thousands of stonemasons worked around the clock in shifts, transforming the rock into a masterpiece of art. Kailas is a monument not to technology, but to human perseverance. For centuries, the temple stood in plain sight. However, the following structure remained hidden under the water until it was accidentally discovered by a diver searching for sharks. In Japan, on the island of Yonaguni in 1986, instructor Kihachiro Arata dived into the water to observe hammerhead sharks. However, instead of the desired fish, he discovered an unusual stone structure at the bottom. It was a massive object resembling a stepped pyramid or an underwater fortress. Aratake discovered perfectly flat terraces, right angles resembling man-made steps, and even unusual formations resembling a road encircling the monument. The dimensions of this object were impressive, 150 meters long and 40 meters wide. After the news of the discovery reached the mainland, the whole world began talking about Japanese Atlantis. The main mystery is the depth. The sea level in this place was only this low during the Ice Age, about 10,000 years ago. If we assume that this is a man-made city, then its age exceeds that of the Egyptian pyramids and Sumerian cities by 5,000 years. Proponents of the pre-civilization theory believe that these are the remains of the legendary continent of Mu, the Pacific counterpart of Atlantis. Some details are difficult to attribute to natural causes: 2 round holes for columns and a rock that resembles a human head. Who could have built this port before it was swallowed by the ocean? There is ongoing debate in the scientific community. Geologists insist that Yonaguni rock was formed from rocks that broke along straight lines as tectonic plates moved. Over the centuries, underwater currents washed away small stones, leaving only large blocks with clearly defined edges. What we perceive as steps and terraces is the result of natural forces, not the work of architects. However, there is one nuance that even the most skeptical will agree with. It is likely that nature laid the foundation, so to speak, a draft, and the ancient people who inhabited these lands before the flood refined it. They could have used natural platforms as a place to quarry stone or as a sanctuary, smoothing out sharp corners and cutting through passages. So the truth probably lies somewhere in between. It is a work created through the collaboration of nature and man. Water can keep secrets, but sometimes the earth hides them even more reliably. In Turkey, a farmer, while repairing the basement of his house, discovered an entrance to an underground world where thousands of people had been hiding for centuries. Imagine that while renovating your house, you tear down an old wall in the basement and stumble upon a dark tunnel leading into the unknown. This is exactly what happened in 1963 to an ordinary resident of the Cappadocia region of Turkey. He could not have imagined that behind his wall was not an ordinary cellar, but the entrance to one of the largest underground cities in the world, Derinkuyu. When archaeologists arrived at the site and began excavations, they were amazed by the scale of the discovery. It was not just a complex of caves, but a real underground metropolis that could accommodate 20,000 people along with livestock. In complete darkness, a full life existed here. Schools, churches, wine cellars, and even pens for livestock. The mines penetrated to a depth of 85 meters, and air was supplied by a hidden ventilation system. What made someone voluntarily live underground, like moles deprived of sunlight? Conspiracy theorists immediately suggested that Derinkuyu was built as a bunker in case of a global catastrophe. Perhaps ancient people were hiding from the consequences of nuclear war, an ice age, or even an invasion by aliens who, in their opinion, patrolled the skies. Adherents of the paleo-contact theory point to the unusual security measures found in the structures. Narrow corridors designed for only one person to pass through, and massive stone wheel doors weighing half a ton and lockable only from the inside. Who were these ancient civilizations so desperately trying to defend themselves from? Historians offer a more practical but no less impressive explanation. Derinkuyu did indeed serve as a refuge, but not from aliens, but from very real enemies. For centuries, these lands were the site of military clashes, first the raids of the Romans, then the Arabs, then the Mongols. The locals took advantage of the unique properties of volcanic tuff. This rock is easy to work with underground, but when it comes into contact with air, it quickly hardens into a durable material similar to concrete. It was the perfect fort. When the enemy approached, the inhabitants hid underground, blocking the entrances with stones. The enemies roamed the surface, unaware that life was bustling underground. This is not a monument to fear, but a testament to the incredible thirst for life and ingenuity of people in trouble. Derinkuyu was a refuge for the living, where they found salvation from war. Once on the tiny island of Ponape in the middle of the endless Pacific Ocean, you will surely hear a warning from the locals. Never stay in the ruins of Nan Madol after sunset. During the day, this archaeological wonder amazes with its engineering, but at night, according to the islanders, the spirits of ancient kings come to life here, and they do not like uninvited guests. Nan Madol is the only ancient city in the world built not on land, but on water, among mangroves and coral reefs. It is not just a few huts on stilts, it is 92 artificial islands connected by a system of canals, thanks to which they have been nicknamed the Venice of the Pacific. Unlike the refined Italian Venice, here you can feel the atmosphere of impressive, formidable grandeur. The city's buildings rise 8 meters above the water, the height of a 3-story house, and consist of thousands of black basalt pillars resembling logs. Each of these stone columns weighs between 5 and 50 tons. The total amount of stone used in the construction of Nan Madol is 750,000 tons. The scale of the work is comparable to that of the Pyramid of Cheops. However, the pyramid was built by 1 million Egyptians, while Pompeii was home to only 25,000 people. They had neither metal nor sophisticated technology. Despite this, they somehow managed to move these giant boulders from a quarry on the other side of the island, transport them through dense jungles and swamps, and then lay them in the water with amazing precision. The island is shrouded in dark legends, and the locals consider it cursed. And they have good reason to believe so. In 1907, German governor Victor Berg, who was responsible for administering the island, decided to disprove these legends. Despite the pleas of the inhabitants, he opened one of the tombs of the ancient rulers located in the center of Nan Madol. Berg was delighted to discover the bones of giants inside, which were larger than those of ordinary people. However, his triumph was short-lived. The next morning, the governor died in agony, and doctors were unable to determine the cause of his death. Local residents then and now say that he disturbed the peace of the Saudelers. The construction of this mystery continues to puzzle scientists. How could 50-ton stone columns have been moved through the jungle? Wheels would have immediately gotten stuck in the mud. Dragged? The friction would have been so strong that it would have required thousands of people, which simply did not live on the island. That is why the most popular version among locals and mysticism enthusiasts is the use of magic. Legends claim that the city was built by two twin brothers, Olosopa and Olosipa, who came from across the sea. They are said to have been powerful sorcerers who mastered the art of controlling gravity. Sitting on the shore, they played music on magical instruments, and to the sound of their music, huge basalt boulders soared into the air and hovered like birds, moving into place. Paleo-contact adherents point to the magnetic anomalies observed in this place, where compasses begin to malfunction. Conspiracy theorists believe that the basalt columns are elements of a giant energy installation left behind by aliens. After all, from a bird's-eye view, the layout of the city really resembles a complex microchip, and the channels in it resemble conductors. Perhaps this is why Victor Berg died. He was exposed to residual radiation or unknown radiation left behind by ancient visitors. Although scientists do not believe in levitation, even they recognize the genius of Nan Madol's engineers in the field of logistics. The key to unraveling the mystery of stone transportation was found when archaeologists decided to move from assumptions to experiments. They concluded that dragging stones over land was impractical. The islanders used the ocean for transportation. Basalt columns were suspended under large rafts made of bamboo and wood. The water made the stones slightly lighter, and the buoyancy of the rafts prevented them from sinking. Without the use of cranes, how could 50 tons be lifted to a height of 8 meters? To do this, they used an inclined plane. The builders constructed a stone structure by laying the stones crosswise, similar to how wooden huts are built. Palm trunks were used as levers to lift the structure layer by layer. The most remarkable thing here is not the technical achievements, but the purpose of building this city. What was the point of such efforts? The answer is striking in its cynicism. Nan Madol was not built as a temple, but as a golden cage. The emperor of the Saudelar dynasty forced the chiefs to move to this city in order to keep them under his control. There was no fresh water or fertile soil on the artificial islands. All necessary resources, from food to water, were delivered from the mainland. The chiefs found themselves in a state of absolute dependence. Any suspicion of rebellion immediately led to the cessation of supplies. It was the first elite concentration camp in history where architecture was an instrument of tyranny. The engineers of Nan Madol used cunning to subjugate the people. However, the creators of the next site possessed a technology for manipulating matter that baffles even modern specialists with the most advanced laser equipment. Our goal is to return to Egypt to immerse ourselves in an underground world that is more frightening than any legends of curses. Everyone knows about the pyramids of Giza and the Sphinx, but the real mystery of Egypt is hidden not under the bright sun, but in the deep underground, in a place called Serapeum in Saqqara. The story of its discovery is worthy of a Hollywood movie. In 1850, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette discovered the head of a sphinx sticking out of the sands of Egypt. He began digging and stumbled upon an alley of statues that led him to a walled entrance to an underground structure. The entrance was so firmly sealed with stone that Mariette had to resort to explosives. When the explosive charge detonated and the dust settled, archaeologists armed with torches entered and found themselves in a world shrouded in eternal darkness and silence. Hundreds of meters of galleries stretched out, carved directly into the rock. However, the researchers were struck by the contents of the niches. They contained 24 giant granite sarcophagi. Their dimensions were truly impressive. They were 4 meters long and over 3 meters high. Each sarcophagus weighed between 70 and 100 tons, comparable to the weight of 2 heavy tanks. On top of them lay lids weighing 30 tons each. Approaching one of the sarcophagi, Mariette noticed a detail that sent a chill down his spine. The layer of dust on the floor remained untouched, clearly showing the traces of workers who had left this place 3,000 years ago. This meant that no one had touched this place. The sarcophagi remained sealed. Archaeologists were convinced that inside lay the mummies of the sacred Apis bulls, covered in gold and jewels. However, with great difficulty, when the lid was finally lifted, inside was found absolute emptiness, a vacuum, only perfectly polished black stone, without bones, gold, or dust. The fact that the most complex ancient containers were empty gave rise to many theories. What was the reason for creating a safe weighing 100 tons if there was nothing inside it? This is where we encounter a level of craftsmanship that cannot be explained by simple tools. Engineer Christopher Dunn, who studied the Serapeum, applied a high-precision square to the wall of the sarcophagus. He did not find the slightest gap. The surface was completely flat, with a margin of error of a fraction of the thickness of a human hair. At the same time, the internal angles were perfectly straight, measuring exactly 90 degrees. Imagine the task. A stonemason must climb inside a granite box, where, in cramped quarters and dim lamplight, he must polish the hardest stone to a flawless optical smoothness. One wrong move and the surface would be ruined. Fans of alternative history are convinced that the Serapeum is nothing more than a technical facility. The granite from which it is built contains quartz, which generates electricity when compressed. Perhaps these are fragments of a giant battery or a protective barrier for the gene pool. Or maybe the creatures inside teleported, leaving their capsules unoccupied. Egyptologists, of course, do not accept the teleportation theory. They refer to inscriptions found on some sarcophagi. These are roughly scratched hieroglyphs that stand out sharply against the perfectly polished stone. Scientists believe that the sarcophagi were created by craftsmen of the ancient kingdom who possessed lost technologies, and thousands of years later, their more primitive descendants discovered them and tried to adapt them for their rituals, carelessly and crudely inscribing, "Here lies a bull." One of the versions proposed by science is related to copper saws and sand. Experiments have confirmed that copper can cut granite if huge amounts of sand are poured under it. However, the speed of this process is only a few millimeters per hour. Making one sarcophagus by hand would take decades of continuous work. The main problem is logistics. The tunnels of the Serapeum are so narrow that 2 people can barely squeeze through. How did they drag 100-ton blocks there? How did they turn them at the corners? And most importantly, how did they lower the blocks into the niches and cover them with 30-ton lids without using hydraulics? The gap between the wall and the stone is only 40 centimeters, making it impossible to place levers. This is why the Serapeum remains the most inconvenient artifact for historians, because even with our modern cranes, it would be extremely difficult to repeat such a feat. Our journey was truly incredible. We saw pyramids older than history itself, descended 18 floors underground, trying to comprehend the minds of those who built such structures. We saw mountains move in India and Egypt. These objects are scattered all over the world, but they have one thing in common. They force us to rethink the limits of what is possible. It's easy to blame it all on aliens or magic, but it is more important and more difficult to acknowledge another fact. Ancient people were far from primitive. Of course, they did not have iPhones, lasers, or the internet. At the same time, they had something that we lack today: time, patience, and a great goal that they pursued for many generations. Looking at the megaliths, we realize the incredible potential of humanity. Perhaps we have not lost the technologies of the past, but simply forgotten what a person driven by faith is capable of. And who knows what secrets our descendants will uncover in 10,000 years in the ruins of our cities. Will they be amazed by our achievements, or will they consider them an unsolved mystery? Share what impressed you the most in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because there are still many secrets ahead of us that we will uncover together. See you soon.